Hello from St. Thomas Episcopal Church and School in San Antonio, Texas, and welcome to our first Bible study, our first kitchen table Bible study. Today is sort of a prologue of the Bible study that we're going to be doing in the month of November. And today we're going to talk about Bibles and study guides and translations and all that kind of good stuff. So if this interests you, keep on watching. We're going to structure today's session in three parts. The first part, I'm going to talk to you about translations of the Bible. The second part is what you might look for in a Bible. Or the third part is going to be on study aids, on other books that will help you read the Bible, understand the Bible, or study the Bible. So we'll talk about all that later, but let's start with translations. So Bibles are translated, you can think of it across two axes. Literal translation or word-for-word translation on a continuum to thought-for-thought translation. So what's the difference? The word-for-word translation is going for the most accurate possible translation that it can be. The thought-for-thought translation is trying to translate the intent or the thoughts into an understandable version of English. And this is always going to be a problem. Anytime that you translate anything from one language to another, even contemporary works from one language to another, it's difficult because thoughts and words are different. And from language to language, people think differently. And by the way, we're inside now, and so you're going to hear the cats and you're going to hear the clocks, and that's just the way it is. So you're in my house, so we have cats and clocks here. Also, I have tea on the table with me, and my Siamese loves tea. And he can't have it, but he thinks he can have it, so no, you're not. He thinks he's going to join us, and he probably will at some point. So just be prepared. In fact, he's going to talk for a while. So this is always these are difficult decisions to make anytime you're translating anything. And then when you're translating something that was written thousands of years ago in cultures that are entirely different from ours, it just adds to the complexity of the issue. And then one thing also I do want to tell you, as I was looking to see if I could find like a nice scattergram of all of the translations and where they fell across these two axes. And what I discovered is that pretty much whoever is selling that translation of the Bible is going to put theirs in the middle. And so it's really hard to find a scattergram of translations that is not biased. I will do my very best to tell you how I think the translations fall. And I'm not saying I am a Bible scholar, and so I could be very wrong, but this is the way it seems to me. Okay, I think that's enough. Let's go ahead and get started. Oh, sorry, there is one more thing. When you are comparing translations of the Bible, it's good to look at take a certain reading and go all the way across all the translations, because then you get a better feel for what appeals to you or what doesn't. And so I would not recommend choosing the 23rd Psalm, although obviously it's one of the best known passages in the Bible. And that's actually part of the problem. It's one of the best known passages in the Bible. And so that makes it more difficult to actually, to read it objectively without emotion. And so you're trying to kind of read this as objectively as you possibly can to see, does this make sense to me? Does this not make sense to me? Does this resonate with me? Does it not? And so that's just my advice. Take that for what it's worth. So we're going to start with the most, at least in this collection, the most word-for-word translations. And so the most word-for-word translation here, and actually that I even know of, is what's called the Interlinear Bible. Hang on just a second, let me move these guys back over so you can see. Oh, there, that should be better. The Interlinear Bible is not a Bible for just reading, cover to cover, unless you're far more a scholar than I ever will be. What it is the Bible is written in its original languages. So the Old Testament is in Hebrew, the New Testament is in Koine Greek, and then the English translation is between the lines. And so it's, between each line, then there's the English translation. Well, the problem is it's below each word is the English translation. So number one, it doesn't flow the way English sentence structure flows. And number two, in the Hebrew section of it, i.e. the Old Testament, which is the vast majority of the readings, you have to read English right to left, which is very difficult to do. Now, in the, let's see if I can show you something here. I'm just picking a page. So you can see where the Hebrew is written here, and tiny little, you can see the English is written under here. But you also see columns here. And what they have done is taken the English translation and actually written it all together so it flows better if you want to read it that way, which does make it a little bit easier. I do not use this Bible as reading it just to be reading. I use this Bible as a study Bible when I want to get a little bit more information or try to get a little closer to the original. If I have a question or there's I'm working on a reading and it doesn't really make much sense to me, I will sometimes come to the interlinear. One thing I will say too, that you will see along with the cats and all that I don't usually have inside are my reading glasses, because I have trouble reading inside lights. Outside you never see them because I can read outside without my reading glasses, but inside, especially in here, because this really isn't set up for reading, it's not very easy for me. In fact, actually, come to think of it, I'm going to be struggling with this because the print is teensy, which is another thing to think about when you're shopping for a Bible, but we'll get into that when we talk about looking for things in the Bible. So the passage I've chosen for us to compare today is actually going to come up in our Bible study later on. And it is what's called the Shema, or the greatest commandment, and it begins, "Hear, O Israel." And this is Deuteronomy chapter 6, and it begins with verse 4. Mang. We don't need Siamese help. So I am going to cheat. I would love to read to you reading English right to left, but I'm going to cheat and read where they put it all together over here. So, "Hear, O Israel, Jehovah our God is one Jehovah. And you shall love Jehovah your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart, and you shall point out them to your sons." And I think that's probably good enough. So you see that doesn't really flow, and it's actually difficult for me to read it to you. But it is good to see how things are translated in this one. Okay, so the next Bible that is more word for word, and this is going to seem very strange perhaps to you, but the next Bible, which is very word for word, is the King James. And so now we're up against, it's much closer to a word for word translation, and it was written in the 1600s, so there's like 400 or 500 years of change in the English language between when the King James Bible was written and now. So that's going to be a problem too. So let's find Deuteronomy 6, chapter 4. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. I am just having a day today. Okay. So I feel personally that the King James flows beautifully, and I would always have a copy of it. But as far as reading just cover to cover, I usually don't. I will also make one little recommendation. If you're going to read the King James, read it out loud. Like poetry, it really helps to hear it in addition to seeing it. So here we go. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. So you can hear, it's very similar, but the cadence is more English than the interlinear is. Now, this Bible is the New King James Version, and Mist is going to join us right now, is the New King James Version, which was an attempt to keep a lot of the cadence and the beauty of the King James. Come on, Misty, darling. Everybody loves you, darling, but let's kind of see if you... She's kind of my cat, and she tends to stay with me. And she likes tea as well. All right. So the point of the New King James Version was an attempt to keep the beauty, the cadence of language in the King James, but modernize it a little bit so that it isn't as difficult for those of us in the 21st century to read. But it still does keep that word-for-word translation. So let's take a look at how this same passage goes in the New King James. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So you see there is a little difference. There's not a lot of the these and thous, which can kind of trip people up, like instead of shout, it's shall. These things do help when you read the King James translation. So these two are quite close, but the New King James Version is easier to read. And this one I will read, kind of front to back, the New King James front to back. So these are more, I've kind of got my Bible sort of arranged here in word for word, middle of the road, and thought for thought. So middle of the road. Well, one of the middle of the road ones, which leans a little, I've seen this, I'm going to say these two translations lean about middle of the road, slightly over to the word for word. And one of them is the one that we use all the time, and this is the New Revised Standard Version. So let's take a look at the Shema in the New King James. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. Keep these words that I am commanding you today in your heart. Recite them to your children, and talk about them when you are at home, and when you are away, and when you lie down, and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand, fix them as an emblem on your forehead, and write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So you see, the thoughts are there, but the wording is a little different. So it's a little easier to understand, I think, definitely than the interlinear or the King James. The second Bible, and this is actually the one I personally use the most, and that is the English Standard Version. It is about at the same spot in the word for word to thought for thought as the New Revised Standard. I just like its flow a little bit better. So let's see what you think. Oops, turned too many pages. Here we go. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And so you see, this one is actually a little closer to the King James translation, but it's also close to the New Revised Standard. So it would kind of fall like this. The English Standard is a little closer to the King James. The New Revised Standard is a little closer to thought for thought, but they're very close to each other. Now, in the thought for thought category, probably falls the most popular Bible translation now, which is the New International Version. For some crazy reason, the New International Version and I just don't really get along all that well. But, and I have no idea why, because it's a very good translation. And it's going to lean more towards the thought for thought. So let's find Deuteronomy 6, verse 4, which is the beginning of that passage. I mean, it's not just that verse. And this, of course, is a small, you can tuck it in your purse Bible, which means it's really hard to read because the text is super small. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorposts of your door frames of your houses and on your gates. So you can see this is a little, in spite of the fact it's tiny and I'm having trouble reading it, this is a little bit more modern language, a little bit easier to understand. And so you can really see why the New International Version is as popular as it is. The next one we're going to look at is the Christian Standard Version. This is a little bit more, we're moving into the thought for thought. So let's go take a look at this one. Listen, Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These words that I am giving you today are to be in your heart. Repeat them to your children. Talk about them when you sit in your house and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them be a symbol on your forehead. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your city gates. Okay, wait a minute, hold it. And on your city gates. Now that's a way different translation. If you want to go back all the way, to the King James, that the city gates is going to be different from your doorposts. So which one is more accurate? Good question. I personally think doorposts is probably more accurate, but I do not read Hebrew. So the one I feel like is in this collection the most thought for thought. There is one more, and I have it electronically. I don't have the hard copy of it. This one is the New Living Translation. So let's go find that same passage here. Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I am giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you are at home and when you're on the road, when you are going to bed and when you are getting up. Tie them on your hands and wear them on your foreheads as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So you see, we're getting progressively we're getting closer and closer to more modern English. And this is where we're going to leave the translations in the books. There is one more translation that is much more modern English, and that's the Peterson translation. And I personally find that one just a little too modern. I don't know, it doesn't work for me, but if it works for you, great. Which brings me to the one lesson, if you don't take anything away from this whole study, I want you to take away that whichever Bible you like the best is the best one for you. And this one isn't any better than this one, isn't any better than this one. It's which one works the best for you. So don't let anybody try to tell you, well, this is the only, the King James is the only translation that you should be, no. In morning prayer, we read the New Revised Standard because that's what our readings are and that's what the Episcopal Church uses. Is that what I use every day to study? Probably not. I will tend to go to the English Standard. But a lot of times, I will tell you, I will read the passage. If I really want to get a feel for it, I'll read the passage 3 times. One time in either the New Revised Standard or the English Standard, one time in usually the New King James, and one time in the New Living. And just see what those differences are and what the feel of those differences are. So that brings us to the end of our talk about translations. Now, I do have one other little thing for you, and that is that there are two websites that I strongly recommend, and I'll leave you the links down in the description below. And one is Bible Gateway, because you can take the same passage and you can read it in so more translations than I even knew existed. The other one is the Blue Letter Bible, which I cannot get out of my head. It sounds like Blue Plate Special, but no, it's the Blue Letter Bible. I really like that website. For one thing, they have recorded the different translations, and so you can have it read to you. And sometimes hearing it just helps you to understand it differently than reading it. Or I'll get them reading it, and I will read along in the book as I'm listening. So it's coming in my eyes and in my ears at the same time. Love, love, love that website. And thanks to my friend who found it and recommended it to me. They also have great reading plans. So if you want to read the Bible in a year, you want to read it in 2 years, whatever, great reading plans. So I think that brings us then to the end of our translation section. So now let's look at, if you're looking for a Bible, what are you looking for? And there are so many variations on Bibles, and where it gets complicated is sometimes you can't find what you're looking for in the translation you're looking for. So trying to get the features you want in the translation you want can be a little tricky, but hang in there, persevere, and you're going to get it. Let's talk first about the Apocrypha, or the deuterocanonical books. We are reading, if you are following along morning prayer at the same time I'm actually posting this Bible study, or recording this Bible study, we are reading in Ecclesiasticus, which is one of the deuterocanonical books. Well, where are you going to find a translation? And I was hoping that there were more translations of the deuterocanonical books, but there really aren't. Generally, you can say if you want a Catholic Bible, so you'll find them in the King James. You'll find them definitely in the New Revised Standard. I believe there is a version of the English Standard Bible with the deuterocanonical books. I'm not positive about that. But none of the later translations have the deuterocanonical books in them. So you're kind of stuck. So if you like the New Living, the New Living or the NIV is the translation you really want, you're going to have to find another copy of the deuterocanonical books. And that's just the way that one goes. So I have my copy of it with the New Revised Standard. So that's just a little note about the deuterocanonical books. Here, let me go ahead. I think what we're going to do is we're going to reset the table a little bit, so I'm going to see you in a minute. So now let's look at different features of different Bibles that may interest you. We're going to start with more of a form factor feature. This is my little copy of the New International Version, but I have a copy about this size and all the translations that I like. And this is a nice size to just toss in a bag and take with you anywhere you want to go. But nothing in life is free, and the cost of this one is it's pretty tiny print, so I have to have pretty strong reading glasses on if I'm not reading in good light. As far as portability goes, if you are a Kindle fan, you might want to consider getting the Bible on an electronic version on the Kindle or on an e-reader. I have several translations on an e-reader, and I do find that to be a handy way to just take it with me and not have to take an additional book and not have to take the weight of an additional book. But if you do like the feel of a book, which I must confess I do, and you do want a small version of it, almost every translation I can think of comes in a small version like this. So this is one thing to think about. So one of the other things to think about, and this is where I hope I don't lose half of you right here, is do you write in your Bible? There are people who, yeah, I know, George is over, they were about to die. George is a rabid, do not write in a book at all, period. Not in a Bible, just don't ever write in a book. And I am a write in a book as much as you want to. There are certain Bibles that are actually meant for that, certain editions of Bibles that are meant for that. This one, and I have two translations in this particular kind of Bible. This one's called the Journaling the Word Bible. And one of the reasons I like it is because it gives you wide margins on either side, on every page, so that you can take notes. And I know when I was watching Dean Robert Willis's Garden Congregation morning prayer, I would take notes in my reading Bibles or my journaling Bibles on what he was talking about. And so I find it nice to have the notes in the Bible. And so you might think, well, yeah, but what if I change my mind later? It's actually, I find it nice to go back and see what I thought the first time or what I thought the last time I was reading this. And that will sometimes help me to remember. So I am a huge fan of journaling in the Bible. If you're not, it's okay. It's fine. I think God's going to be fine whichever way you go with that. It's the intention that's what matters. So, yeah. And journaling the Word is a good Bible. There are several journaling Bibles that you can get. Now, the ultimate in journaling Bible, and there are only 2 translations that have this that I know of, is what's called an interlinear, I'm sorry, not an interlinear Bible, an interleaved Bible. This is my main study Bible. This is the English Standard Version, interleaved edition. So interleaved, and you can tell I've got notes stuck in this thing. I'd have to find some places where I've actually done some journaling and notes and all kinds of things. But every page in this Bible has a blank page between it. So it's a page of writing front and back, and then it's a blank page. You're just going to have to trust me. It's blank page front and back. So you have a complete blank page to do any kind of journaling, any kind of note-taking, doodling, art, whatever you want to do. And I typically, I'm really not much of an artist. And so I tend to, let's see if I can find someplace. Yeah, I'm a very boring person. So I just typically tend to write my notes here. And sometimes I will draw towards, or I'll try to write opposite where the passage is. But this is the ultimate, absolutely the ultimate in journaling in your Bible. You're going to pay for that, and I don't mean so much in money as I mean this book is big and heavy, and it's just big and heavy. The only 2 translations that I know of that come in the interleaved edition are the New King James and the English Standard. And those are the only 2 that I know of at this time, anyway, that come in this interleaved. But if it's your thing and you really, really love to journal and write and everything, those guys are great choices. So moving away from the controversial topic of do you write in your Bible or do you not, let's look at some other options. This, I believe, only comes in the New Revised Standard, but the New Oxford Annotated Bible is probably the be-all and end-all of study Bibles. You tackle this one, you're going to fall down a lot of rabbit holes because the Bible, and I'm just opening random pages, most of it, for here, just this top part of the page is the actual Bible. All of this is notes on it. So if you're having trouble understanding, I spend more time in this Bible when I'm reading Paul's letters than you can imagine, because it's interesting to see what the translators thought of and their discussions and what they think. And I think just having a study Bible is a really, really good choice. Having a study Bible, however, you're going to have to be careful as to which study Bible you get. I feel that this one is a very scholarly edition. I have had, I think back, they're on the 5th edition. I think I started with the 3rd edition, and this was when I was back in college. So I've been using the Oxford Annotated Bible for quite some while, and I find it very scholarly and not particularly biased, which I like. I prefer that point of view. Beware, it comes in paperback. Don't get the paperback one. Not if you intend to use it. My very first one was paperback because I was a poor college kid, and actually it was required reading in one of my classes. And so I got the paperback edition and regretted it because it fell apart so quick. So if you're going to do this one, get the hardback one and just expect it's going to be extremely heavy, because it's going to be extremely heavy. Then another Bible I'm extremely fond of, and it does come in a lot of different translations, is the Cultural Study Bible, the Cultural Background Study Bible. I love this Bible because it gives you, again, I'm just going to open randomly somewhere. It gives you a lot of cultural information interleaved into the Bible itself. And so this Bible is great for reminding us and telling us about what was going on at that same time. What were the other tribes and the other peoples around? What were the Romans up to? What were the Greeks up to? How the land influenced the people, customs, all kinds of things. I just love this Bible. The only thing I don't like about it is that the paper is a little cheap, I guess. I don't want to say that, but it's a little fragile. I don't know how it's going to wear over time. I've only had this one for a few years, and it's held up really well, but I'm just hoping it keeps on holding up. Oh, also, by the way, I just happened to open this to something. You'll also notice that this is the only part of the Bible. All of this is notes. So this, too, being a study Bible, has a lot of notes. So I do really enjoy this Bible. I would actually say I would not get either one of these first. If you are interested in a study Bible, then I would look into it. But I would not get a study Bible as your main reading Bible. Why not? Because you tend to wander down rabbit holes, or at least if you're like me, you're going to totally wander down rabbit holes. And it's hard to kind of keep that flow, and you really want to keep the flow. So I always have just a reading Bible. And that works very well for me. Okay, so these are different kinds of Bibles and what kind of options that you can get. Of course, you can get all different sizes. You can get different covers. I'm not a real fan of hardcover. These two are hardcover because this is the way they come. But I'm not a super fan of hardcover just because they're heavier. I like the more flexi covers, but again, these will probably hold up. I've never had a problem with one of these falling apart. The only one I've had any trouble with was the paperback edition of the Oxford Study Bible or Annotated Bible, and probably, I think any paperback version, if you're going to actually use it, it's going to get kind of torn up. So that is our section on what to look for in Bibles and some of the options that you can find. So now let's look at some study aids and things that might help you study your Bible. And before we get started on that, I just happened to remember a Bible that I had forgotten to mention in the earlier section, the last section of different options that you can get with your Bible. There are a series of Bibles, the Thompson's Chain Bibles, and those are really great. I don't have one here to show you, but I love those Bibles because you can they don't come in all the translations, but they come in the big ones. So probably the translation you're looking for, they've got a version of it. And the Thompson's Chain Bible takes a thought and traces that thought from one end of the Bible to the other. And so, again, you can seriously fall down the rabbit hole in that Bible. But you can see how that thought develops, and forwards and backwards. So it's extensively annotated as far as that goes. So it's a great Bible too. Okay, so let's start looking at what you might need for your Bible study. The first thing is your journal. And especially if you are not one of those people who wants to write in your Bible, definitely you can keep a journal. And that's, even if you do write in your Bible, keeping a journal of your Bible study is really good because you can go back, you can see how your thoughts have changed, how your understanding has changed, and how different things relate to, different passages from the Bible or stories from the Bible relate to where you are at the time. And a journal is such a great way of doing this. Now you don't have to have a happy planner. Anything will do. Electronic will do. A tablet will do. Anything will do. If you do want a more structured Bible plan, reading plan, or if you want more structured notes, I like the James method myself. One of the things I really like about it is, and you're probably not going to be able to see this really well, but when you verse map, if you want to really get into a verse, the James method is really good because it will point to some of the other Bible study aids that I'm going to tell you about. But it's a good way to really dig into a verse or a couple of verses. So, and it's not just verse mapping. It's a lot of other things too that they have in the James method. Again, we'll leave the link down there. And tucked away in here, when I mentioned the Blue Letter Bible, you can get your reading plan. And you can just print this out, and you can have a paper copy of it. You don't have to do that. You can keep on, if you have an account on and it's free, on there you can keep track of your reading online with your Blue Letter Bible account. And another thing I like about them is they have a lot of different reading plans. You can start front to back. I mean, start with Genesis, end with Revelation, or you can do one. This is one I'm working on now, which I really kind of like. It's called the chronological plan, and you're reading in the order of how the books would have been written or how the events would have taken place. So they kind of the readings kind of wind up being interleaved. I wouldn't recommend that for a first time if this is your first time and want to read the Bible front to back, but it is a really interesting way of looking at it. They have others too. So again, links down below. So I think probably this is the most useful thing for you in your Bible study is just a notebook. Take notes. But of course, there's lots of other things. One of the things I like personally, this is just me, is Bible maps. A lot of Bibles have maps in the back of them. This book is dedicated to it. Timelines and maps. Let's take a look. Oh, there's so much in here. Just lots of maps. And then you'll see different maps of how the land was divided up at different times. I like these kind of comparisons. What the Middle East was at one time, what it is now. And this kind of helps you to visualize where things happened based on how we have the land divided up now. So I'm not saying that this is a super, you got to have one of these. I just like maps. It's a thing that I do. One thing that I find very useful is a Bible dictionary. A lot of Bibles will have a dictionary included with them, but I like having the separate dictionary because let's just face it, you can get more into a separate book than you can tacked onto the end of a Bible. This is Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary. I think it's really good. So whenever I have, we'll just let it fall open. Okay, a deacon, here we go. A deacon, a servant or minister, an ordained lay officer in many Christian churches. And then we're going to go on and we talk about this like for an entire page. So this is, and then of course it'll have references in the Bible to where these words were mentioned. But I just absolutely love having a Bible dictionary. This one's illustrated. I like pictures. This one's illustrated. So it's a real, I find it to be a real help. And when there's a word, there's something I don't really understand, this is probably where I'm going to start, is with the Bible dictionary. So for example, let's look at, because this got me interested one day. I was like, we always say, fear the Lord. Does that mean afraid of? Or does that mean respect? Was that really a good translation? So let's just look it up. Fear, a feeling of reverence, awe, and respect, or an unpleasant emotion caused by a sense of danger. Fear may be directed toward God or humankind, and it may be either healthy or harmful. A healthy fear is reverence or respect. The Bible teaches that children are to respect their parents, wives are to respect their husbands, and slaves are to respect their masters. And of course, there are the references here in that. So the scriptures also declare that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, as well as the beginning of wisdom. A harmful fear is a sense of terror or dread. And so you can go on with that. But that really got me thinking about how we use the word fear in the Bible. So Bible dictionary, it doesn't have to be this one, but I really do like this one. Again, it is hardback. It is way heavy. You're not taking this with you anywhere. It kind of lands on the shelf and it only goes across the room, but a great resource. Now, probably one of the most famous resources is a concordance. Again, a lot of Bibles have a concordance in them, but nothing is going to be as exhaustive as this extremely heavy tome, the Strong's Concordance. It has been expanded, it's been updated several times. It started, I think, in the 1800s or so, probably before that, and every word of the Bible is indexed in here. So, wow, that's just all I have to say. So let's find the word fear, because we just looked at it in our Bible dictionary. So let's look at the word fear. So it's going to be an entire page, a very tiny type of every place fear is used in the Bible. Now you're going to notice every place it's used, there's going to be just an itty bitty little "thou shalt fear the Lord thy God." And oh golly, that's cool. It's in Deuteronomy 6, verse 13. We were just in Deuteronomy 6, weren't we? So we're going to see a number here that says 3372. So we know that because this is Old Testament, we're going to look at the Hebrew. So we're going to go over here and we're going to look up 3372. And did I get all that close? No, I didn't even get close. 72. Oh, this is cool. Okay. So here's 3372, the reference in the Hebrew section. I will not try to pronounce Yahweh is apparently it. A primary root to fear, more to revere, or to frighten. Fear, afraid, terrible, a terrible thing, dreadful, that's 5 times. Reverence, 3 times. Fearful, 2 times. Terrible acts, 1 time. Miscellaneous, 8 times. Yare means to be afraid, to stand in awe or fear. Basically, this verb connotes the psychological reaction of fear. Yare may indicate being afraid of something or someone. So you can find the word here and then look at it in the concordance and see how it is used in different places. And a lot of times what you're going to find is that when we move from the Old Testament to the New Testament, words may take on a slightly different meaning, which only makes sense. They were written a long way apart, and of course the New Testament was written in Greek and the Old Testament in Hebrew. So we could spend a long time in the concordance, but I think probably if it were me, the first thing I might get would be a study Bible. The next thing would probably either be the dictionary or the concordance, and then I'd flip. And those are the things that I feel that really do help studying the Bible. Of course, you need a lot of bookshelf space for all of this. I will say that. Now, the last thing that we want to look at are Bible commentaries. I have the Bible Knowledge Commentary. This is the Old Testament, and of course you see it's so much smaller, and the New Testament. I've got a word to say about Bible commentaries. Shop carefully, because Bible commentaries are very frequently one person's view of the Bible, and they may be extremely biased. I like this one because they have editors, but they have a lot of contributors. There are 2 editors, but a lot of contributors. However, this is a small commentary, and so it's not really exhaustive. So I'm not sure. I don't find myself using this one a lot. But let's go back to our Shemang. So let's go back to verse 6, or chapter 6, verse 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. The command and its importance. Verse 4, which if you remember is the Hero Israel. This verse has been called the Shema from the Hebrew word translated hear, and that's the first word, hear, O Israel. The statement of this verse is the basic confession of faith in Judaism. The verse means that the Lord, Yahweh, is totally unique. He alone is God. The Israelites could therefore have a sense of security that was totally impossible for their polytheistic neighbors. The gods of ancient Near East rarely were thought of as acting in harmony. Each god was unpredictable and morally capricious, so a pagan worshiper could never be sure that his loyalty to one god would serve to protect him from the capricious wrath of another. The monotheistic doctrine of the Israelites lifted them out of this insecurity, since they had to deal with only one God who dealt with them by a revealed, consistent, righteous standard. And there you are. So, and of course it goes on. But that's a little sample of this commentary. So if you're having trouble understanding something, or you just want to dig deeper into it, a Bible commentary is a good resource. You can also always, check these out of libraries, or if they're in reference areas, you may not be able to check them out, but you can go to your library and look. There's just all kinds of resources like this. I do like this one. There are commentaries where there is a book for each book of the Bible, and if you have a lot of shelf space, you can get one of those. But I like this more concise version. Also, as concise as it is, the print is not terribly difficult to read. So I hope that you have enjoyed this little tour through different translations of the Bible and different study guides and different versions of Bibles and what you can find available to you. And if you have any more questions, of course, you can always leave comments down there and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So this is our little prequel of our Bible study, and then next week we'll start actually studying, and we're going to dig deeper into the Old Testament roots of Jesus' teachings. So God bless.